The visual design of Papers, Please is very interesting. At first, I think that all of the documents really clutter the scene. There are multiple documents you need to look at and use the inspection tool, and for me, it got particularly hard trying to keep track of everything. There's a lot of information to weed through with each person, and it seemed like I was taking too long. The game has a very Soviet Russia feel to it with the artwork and the colors, reds, grays, and the characters themselves seem very cold and dull. Furthermore, there are a lot of symbols like the work permits and the eagle at the very start of the game. It's like this marching, like a marching introduction, the introduction scene. Also, the game itself is very pixelated, and the graphics aren't super high. Like at the top of the screen is a bunch of people in line, and the guards, and like they're obviously people, and you can tell what they're doing. But like the point of the game isn't to focus on that; it's to focus on the papers. I believe every interaction in the game has its own audio that goes with it, like closing the shades, inspecting the papers, accepting or declining someone's admission. All of this added up, I think, really made it feel like you were a border patrol. I think the game's audio was like really important for the feel of the game, but it's also useful because the player can make sure that they're doing the thing they wanted to do. However, it can be pretty repetitive. Like when you're clicking in the discrepancy mode, when you click a thing that's looked at, it makes a sound every time, and that can get like really repetitive really early. Also, the characters are speaking a different language or like a made up just sound. However, there's speech text, so I don't know if the audio like between the player and the person being inspected is like absolutely necessary. There's a lot of different types of interaction in the game that like for different modes of the game. For instance, to interact with something, it needs to be in an inspection or discrepancy mode, or that screen where you're trying to like take care of all your family members. The days have a time limit, so the player has to interact with all of the different documents like pretty fast. And I find myself trying to limit the interaction I had, like overall. What I mean by this is at first I try to interact with as much information as possible with each person trying to enter. However, as I kept playing, I felt that interacting could also be like a curse. You need to move quickly in order to make money. Therefore, like I try to interact less and just breeze through the information, just trying to see if something caught my eye that like didn't look right. And with the pairs with the family members, you have to use the money you earn that day to take care of or try to take care of your family. However, I think I felt a lack of direction with the interaction. The player is sort of thrown into the fire in a sense. There's like a lot of info to go through, and the inspection tool has a lot of relationships between data, and you don't really know if something is going to come from it. However, going through each day and by trial and error, I felt like I was more attuned and more acclimated to exactly what I was trying to look for. And I guess I just felt like more comfortable finding the discrepancies between the documents. The narrative of the game is that you take control of a border patrol agent of a Russia-like communist country, I guess. You have to permit or deny people into the country based on the things like their passports, their work visas, and the inconsistencies there are in their documents. You are paid for every person you correctly permit or deny, and you lose money eventually if you people if the people who are not if you let people who are not qualified into the country. Furthermore, during work there can be unexpected events at the gate that affect the gameplay. For instance, there were a few terrorist attacks that happened during the game, and then new rules were put into the next day to help them try to stop the attacks. The, then, after each day of work, you go home and treat your family members who each have a list of issues like hunger or like disease, coldness, and then you have to pay rent. I actually thought that the game was pretty hard. I had multiple family members die, what seemed like pretty early on, because I did not have the money to provide for them. I think this primarily came from the fact that I was inspecting each person for too long of a period. Therefore, I was not paid much money. Like I think my expenses I my expenses are pretty high, So I only had like $10 to like provide for my family. So I had to like choose who to provide for, like the mom, the son, or the mother-in-law. I think there was one more, but you had to like choose in a sense who to take care of. I think the game itself, like the concept, doesn't seem that hard. However, I think proper execution of the game is hard to pull off. Specifically, there are a few people who seem like they should not be allowed in. Like they had like matching passports and work visas, like the names or the numbers. And there's some people who gave you like strip club or like prostitution cards, but oftentimes all of these people were legal and you had to let in. Therefore, you had to like look at all the information. You could not come to conclusions like early on based on like what they said necessarily. Otherwise, you had to pay money and you couldn't provide for your family. I also think there are ethical issues that are mixed into this game. One instance I remember was that a husband and wife were trying to get into the country. However, only the husband had the proper implementation to get in. If you split them up like the rules tell you to, you get money to provide for your family. However, you are splitting up a husband and wife. If you let them both in, you are violating the laws of the country and lose money to provide for your ill family. However, you let the couple be together. Furthermore, as you continue to play the game, there's like a scanner that becomes available to you that you can look at people coming through. It's a pretty big invasion of privacy. It's something that I cannot see being implemented in actuality to this extent. However, it brings up the issues of security and safety. These searches could potentially find weapons on people and stop further attacks. Therefore, there is technically a reason to use them. However, how much is too much? And are these rules are the total rules too lenient or too strict? And I think that Papers, Please like delves into these issues of immigration, like stereotyping and bias, and border protection, all to some extent. The visual design of Papers, Please